Most people think I'm insane. 13 kids. That's a logistics nightmare, right? But what if I told you they're the best investment I've ever made, and that wanting more isn't a burden, it's a mission? If you think this is just about diapers and school runs, think again. This is about the survival of human creativity, legacy, and future civilization. Most people hear that I have 13 kids, and their first reaction is either shock, pity, or curiosity. How do you manage that many? Why would anyone choose that? And the most common one, are you insane? But here's the truth. I don't just have 13 kids. I want more. And no, it's not because I enjoy chaos or want to break some personal record. It's because I've looked at the future, I've studied the data, and I know something that most people are too distracted or too afraid to admit. We are running out of people. Let me repeat that. We are not facing an overpopulation crisis. We are racing toward a population collapse. Birth rates are dropping dramatically across the globe, and it's not just a statistical issue. It's an existential threat. If we continue down this path, we won't have enough humans left to solve the problems we've created, or to even maintain what we've built. Now imagine a world where the brightest minds, the most creative souls, the builders and dreamers, are never born. A world with fewer teachers, fewer artists, fewer engineers, fewer explorers. That's not dystopian sci-fi plot. That's the direction we're headed. So I decided to do something that seems radical in today's world, but is actually very logical if you think long term. I chose to invest in humanity by creating more of it. You see, we celebrate startups that scale fast. We celebrate disruption, innovation, and launching new ideas into the world. But what about launching new humans into the world? What about building a family as a living legacy? A system of minds raised not just to survive, but to lead, to question, to imagine. That's what I'm building. And here's the secret no one wants to admit. Raising a large family is the greatest leadership challenge on Earth. It's not just parenting, it's systems design, communication architecture, emotional intelligence management, conflict resolution, resource allocation, and long-term cultural preservation. In many ways, my household runs like a company, and each child is a unique project, a new iteration of everything I've learned, unlearned, and dreamed about humanity. Now you might be thinking, okay, but why more? Because I believe in redundancy, diversity, and exponential thinking. The more children I have, the greater the range of minds, personalities, and ideas that emerge. It's a way to future-proof not just my name, but human potential itself. Each one of my kids is an unpredictable force of energy, capable of ideas that might change the world. What if one of them finds a cure for a major disease? What if another builds the next energy revolution? What if one simply becomes the kindest, most grounded soul in a fractured society? That alone would be enough. I don't want to live in a world where we look at children as burdens. I want a world where children are seen as hope, as possibilities, as investments in a future we may never fully see, but must still build. So if you came here expecting a story of exhaustion, struggle, or regret, you're in the wrong place. What I have is energy, vision, and a purpose bigger than myself. And if you stay with me, I'll show you exactly why this isn't a story about parenting. It's a story about saving the future. When we think about value, what really moves the world forward, most people default to technology, money, infrastructure, or data. But none of those things matter without one essential element: humans, the people who imagine, build, refine, and scale, the people who create, the people who dare. You can have the most advanced AI system in the world, but without a human to point it toward the right problem, it's directionless. You can build a trillion-dollar company, but without visionary leadership and inspired teams, it collapses. It's not algorithms that innovate, it's the minds that design them. This is why I view each child not as a liability or mouth to feed, but as an asset more valuable than any machine, product, or platform, an asset that grows in complexity, creativity, and intelligence with time. Human capital is the core driver of progress. If we lose that, we lose everything, and let's be clear, we are losing it. Nations that were once brimming with youthful energy are now facing shrinking populations. Japan, South Korea, most of Europe, even parts of the United States. Fewer children are being born every year, and fewer families are choosing to grow. That means fewer future engineers, fewer doctors, fewer teachers, fewer thinkers. We are accelerating into a demographic winter, and no one is hitting the brakes. Meanwhile, global problems are scaling rapidly. Climate change, resource scarcity, health crises, misinformation. These are challenges that can't be solved by fewer minds. They demand more minds, better minds, and that begins with one decision: to invest in human capital now, not later. Every one of my children is a future builder, whether they realize it yet or not. I don't need them all to become scientists or CEO. What I need is for them to grow up as conscious, curious, courageous humans, willing to think independently, lead ethically, and care deeply. That's the most powerful form of investment on Earth. Look at history. Every era of great innovation was driven by people, not just systems. The Renaissance wasn't sparked by institutions. It was lit by individuals willing to question, paint, invent, and rebuild the world they inherited. What we need now is not more optimization. We need more visionaries, more dreamers, more doers, and that starts with creating more people with the freedom and foundation to think differently. Now, I get it, having kids isn't for everyone. That's not the argument. The argument is this: we can't keep pretending that children are a threat to progress when, in fact, they are the only thing keeping progress alive. I believe in the long game. I believe that in 50 years, we'll look back at this era and realize that our biggest crisis wasn't climate, wasn't AI, wasn't inflation. It was population collapse. And those who saw it coming and responded by growing strong families with strong values will be the ones who preserved the light. So yes, I have 13 kids, and I want more, not because I'm nostalgic or trying to make some moral statement. I want more because I understand leverage, human potential, multiplied over time and nurtured with intention, is the most scalable force in existence. The best asset class isn't cryptocurrency, gold, or stock, it's human capital. And every child raised with purpose is a living portfolio of potential. That's what I'm investing in. That's why I'm all in. You don't need to raise a series around to build something revolutionary. You don't need a board of investors to start a legacy. Sometimes the most powerful launch pad doesn't come from a pitch deck. It comes from the decision to raise a family. You see, everyone wants to talk about building startups, founding companies, disrupting industries, and I've done that. I understand the playbook. But here's something no one tells you: raising a family is the most complex, high-stakes startup you will ever run. The stakes are generational, the results compound over decades, and the ROI, if you do it right, is civilization itself. Each child is like a startup founder in the making. They're born with raw potential, unique vision, and a total absence of limits. My job as a parent isn't to mold them into who I want them to be. My job is to seed them with strong values, give them access to the right tools, and let them build whatever their version of the future looks like. Let me break it down. Startups require structure and flexibility. So does a family. They require mentorship and room to fail. So does a child. Startups need vision, execution, resilience, adaptability, and constant iteration. Sound familiar? My home is a living ecosystem. It's part think tank, part emotional lab, part logistical operation, and part launchpad. There are systems for everything: nutrition, communication, conflict resolution, learning, scheduling. We have protocols, but we also have chaos. And the beautiful thing is that both are necessary. Innovation never happens without friction. Growth never happens without unpredictability. You want to learn about leadership? Try convincing a 4-year-old and a 16-year-old to work together toward a common goal without anyone crying. You want to master resource allocation? Feed 13 unique personalities with different appetites and preferences. You want to understand crisis management? Try helping 2 kids navigate heartbreak while a third is asking you how the solar system works. There is no MBA in the world that will prepare you for that. But here's the thing, I wouldn't trade it for anything, because every moment in this startup is driven by something no business can buy: love and legacy. And unlike companies that can be sold, shut down, or acquired, a family lives on, it evolves, it multiplies, it passes down not just genetics, but principles. It doesn't need marketing or stock options to scale. It needs attention, intention, and time. Every family, no matter how big or small, is a microculture, a future society in prototype form. What we build at home gets exported into the world. So when I choose to build my family, I'm not just building memories. I'm building leaders, creators, protectors, thinkers. I'm building the people who will raise the next generation. You want to change the world? Start at the dinner table. That's where real innovation begins. That's where empathy is practiced, ideas are challenged, and confidence is earned. The world doesn't need more influencers. It needs more influential parents. People who understand that the family unit is not a relic of the past, but a launchpad to the future. So yes, I view my family like a startup. But it's not about growth for growth's sake. It's about scale with purpose, culture with integrity, vision with values. I want more kids because I want more chances to seed the future with minds that matter. In the end, building a great company might change the world, but building a great family that ensures the world continues. Let's get something straight. One of the most dangerous lies we've been fed in modern society is this: the world is overpopulated. That statement is not just misleading, it's a catastrophic misunderstanding of what's actually happening. Yes, cities feel crowded, traffic is bad, housing prices are rising, but these are logistical failures, not evidence that we have too many people. The truth is, what we're facing isn't a population explosion. It's a slow-motion collapse. And unlike a tech crash or a market dip, this one's irreversible. The numbers are terrifying if you know where to look. In most developed countries, birth rates are plummeting below replacement level. That means fewer babies, fewer workers, fewer taxpayers, fewer innovators. Look at countries like Japan, South Korea, Germany, and even China. The headlines aren't about population growth anymore. They're about population decline, economic stagnation, and the fear of becoming ghost nations. Here's the real math. To sustain a stable population, each woman needs to have about 2.1 children on average. In some countries, that number has dropped below 1. It sounds like a small dip, but over decades, it leads to societal collapse. Schools close down, cities shrink, elderly populations explode, pensions run dry, and worst of all, the cultural engine stops. Now zoom out and look at the long-term effect. Imagine a world with fewer scientists, fewer teachers, fewer problem solvers. Imagine a world where most of the population is aging, sick, or retired, and there aren't enough young people to take care of them or carry the torch forward. That's not a dystopia. That's the trajectory we're on right now. And yet, we still hear the same outdated narrative. stop having children. Save the planet. But here's the contradiction no one likes to talk about. The countries with the lowest birth rates are often the cleanest, most technologically advanced, and most capable of solving the climate crisis. The carbon footprint of a child raised with clean energy, education, and sustainability is nowhere near the threat we're made to believe. If anything, we need more smart kids, not fewer. We need more minds working on AI alignment, planetary defense, climate tech, medical innovation, and ethical governance. Those minds won't fall from the sky. We have to raise them. That's why I'm not afraid to have more children. I'm afraid of a world where people are too afraid to. I'm afraid of a world that treats human life as a liability rather than the most valuable asset we have. Now, I'm not saying everyone should go have 10 kids tomorrow. This isn't about guilt or obligation. This is about perspective. We have been trained to think that growth is dangerous, but the truth is strategic, intentional, values-based population growth is how civilizations survive. This isn't about romanticizing the past. It's about engineering the future. If we don't build it, we need people who are brave enough to challenge the narrative, to realize that investing in children isn't reckless. It's visionary, because a declining population means declining ideas, declining defense, declining energy, declining hope. So yes, I want more kids, not out of vanity but out of strategy, because if we don't reverse this trend, we'll wake up one day and realize the world didn't end with a bang, it ended with an empty crib, a silent playground, and the echo of voices that were never born. When people talk about legacy, they usually picture a statue, a name on a university building, a line in a history book, or maybe a patent in a museum. They think legacy is something you buy with success, with invention, with money, but that's not legacy, that's branding. Real legacy doesn't live on plaques. It lives in people. It's passed on, not posted. It's something you build every day, not with a press release, but around your kitchen table. And this is where most of the modern world gets it wrong. We are so focused on scaling systems, building rockets, decoding genomes, and colonizing planets, that we forget where every single one of those achievements begins. At home, in the messy, chaotic, beautiful reality of family, it starts with bedtime stories with questions like, why is the sky blue? And can I build my own robot? It begins with kids asking how things work and why things matter. And if you pay attention, if you guide those questions instead of ignoring them, you begin to shape something that no laboratory on Earth can replicate, a thinking, feeling, dreaming mind that's hungry to make a difference. My kids aren't my property, they're not my clones. They're the future I get to influence, but not control. My job isn't to program them, it's to unlock them, to create an environment where curiosity thrives, where discipline and love exist together, and where ideas don't just live. They evolve in many ways. The home is the first lab, the first startup, the first school, the first launchpad, and yet, somehow, we've convinced ourselves that it's not worth as much as the innovations outside of it. Let me say this clearly. The most valuable things I'll ever build will not be made of metal, or code, or capital. They'll be made of character, kindness, courage, and intelligence. Those things are born in my children, and it's my job to protect and develop them. I think about legacy not as something I leave behind, but something I plant now, not in the ground, but in the minds of my kids. When I see one of them solve a problem with logic and empathy, that's legacy. When they ask hard questions and sit with uncertainty, that's legacy. When they treat each other with respect, or stand up for what's right without being told to, that's legacy. And here's the best part. That kind of legacy scales. It moves from one child to another. It gets passed to their friends, to their classmates, and someday to their children. It's exponential. It moves without needing a platform. It grows without needing a brand. and it survives every system collapse, market shift, or algorithm change. You see, the world remembers inventors and conquerors, but it runs on the values passed from one generation to the next. Quietly, steadily, intentionally. If we don't protect that, we lose everything that makes humanity worth saving. So when people ask me why I want more kids, this is the answer. Because every child is a chance to extend the legacy of wisdom, strength, and imagination. Not for me, but for the world that comes next. I'm not building a name. I'm building a foundation. I'm not chasing followers. I'm raising leaders. In a world obsessed with scale and speed, I choose something slower, but deeper, a kind of innovation you can't patent, a kind of wealth you can't measure, a kind of future you can't buy, but you can raise, and that's what legacy really is. People often ask me, aren't 13 kids too many? My answer is always the same. Too many for what? Too many for conventional living, absolutely. Too many for routine thinking, definitely. But if your goal is innovation, if your mission is to shape the future, then 13 is just the beginning, because every child is a new possibility, a new variable in the experiment of human creativity, a new combination of personality, talent, curiosity, and resilience. And when you multiply those variables, the potential for breakthrough ideas doesn't just grow, it compounds. Innovation doesn't come from doing what's predictable. It comes from diversity of thought, from collisions of perspectives, from the tension between chaos and order. Do you know what environment produces exactly that? A big, messy, passionate, idea-filled family. Some of the best ideas I've heard didn't come from boardrooms. They came from breakfast conversations, from my 9-year-old explaining how he would design a city on Mars, from my teenager challenging me on ethics in AI, from watching my younger ones try, fail, and try again, with zero fear of judgment. That's innovation in its rawest form. Children are fearless creators. They haven't been conditioned yet to believe what's impossible. They ask questions that adults have stopped asking. They build things that don't follow instructions. They test limits not to break them, but to understand them. And if we listen instead of dismissing them, we begin to realize this is where our next evolution comes from. We live in a time where we're obsessed with optimization, streamlining, automating, but the truth is, innovation doesn't come from optimization. It comes from unpredictability, from the sparks that happen when different minds interact in unexpected ways. That's what happens in a large family every single day. I watch it like a living lab, siblings challenging each other, defending each other, copying, remixing, innovating. One day they're fighting, the next they're building a game or writing a song together. The creative friction between them, that's a prototype for the kind of thinking we need in the world. More kids means more data points, more experiments, more worldviews, more emotional intelligence. You don't get innovation from echo chambers, you get it from collisions, and there's no better collision engine than a home filled with 13 unique, evolving humans. Now imagine scaling that. Imagine families, big and small, raising not just kids, but creators, kids who think for themselves, who aren't afraid to be wrong, who are trained not to memorize answers, but to ask better questions. That's the kind of human capital that will outlast AI, outperform automation, and outthink any algorithm. I don't have 13 kids to follow tradition. I have them to future-proof imagination, to raise thinkers who aren't boxed in by a dying status quo. Because the next great breakthrough won't come from what we already know, it'll come from a child asking, why not? This is not about volume for the sake of numbers. This is about betting on brains, on hearts, on souls that might, just might, change everything. And here's the truth no one wants to admit. You can raise the next Steve Jobs, the next Einstein, the next Maya Angelou, and never even know it. You don't raise greatness by planning it. You raise it by creating the conditions for it to emerge. That's what I'm doing, one kid at a time. So yes, I want more kids, because I want more thinkers, more rebels, more builders, more minds that challenge mine, more humans who will ask the questions I forgot. Ask. That's not chaos, that's not madness, that's innovation.